Before we get into today's video, I just want to give a special shout out to three people who helped with some of the information in there. First of all, Reddit user I made this, also Frequents versus Battle Wiki, helped a lot with some of the Naruto backstory and the knowledge and scans necessary. Reddit user Chainsaw Monkey helped look over some of the logical details and the theory therein used. And user Joshless, also known as Lord Xkano, well known through a lot of paddleboarding sites, giving me the Uzumaki art book translations as well as the actual raw scans so that anyone can feel free to double check any of the information they are in. And I will leave everything down in the description box below just so you can have full unfettered access to it instead of trying to pause the video. Now, without further ado, please like, subscribe if you enjoy anything or even if you disagree with anything and enjoy the video. An author of a famous fantasy world sits down at a conference. It's a question and answer segment with fans. One adoring fan stands up and asks him a question. During your book, the main character, he slices through an anvil, but that character is stated to be a normal human wielding a normal sword. If you do the math on that, that amount of force is way above what any human can do. So what gives? The author replies with a chuckle. Oh, they're a normal human by definition, so maybe the anvil is just weak. Oh well. It's not uncommon to encounter scenarios like the above often when it comes to battleboarding. I'm Daniel from Battleboard Theory, today to examine the phenomenon of separating explicit intent from fan calculations in pieces of fiction, all aiming to try and nail down precisely what certain characters actually are capable of. Now, the opening example may seem a bit contrived, but really it's no different than ignoring what commonly happens in fiction. The issue in battleboarding comes when fans take isolated feats and make enormous presumptions of all the physical specifications surrounding those feats, and then try to claim that it's as accurate an approximation as possible of their capabilities. But those presumptions go directly against author intent. So why is that a problem, you may wonder? I mean, after all, the feed itself exists on the page. I can see it. Why can't I just make a calculation? Well, if it fits within the established parameters of the character, there's no problem at all. If it contradicts clearly outlined and established limitations, however, now you're engaging a fanfic version of a canon character, and you're no longer engaging in good faith. And you're especially not doing so in any type of fictional debate. An easy explanation for why my view of authorial intent is more accurate lay with a very common logical litmus test called Occam's razor. It's a logical solution to any two disparate conclusions, which states the conclusion which requires the fewest assumptions is usually correct. In a fan calculation, you're assuming every parameter to be correct 9 times out of 10. And taking written statements just as true because the author created them, my only assumption is the character knows themselves or the author knows his world. One assumption for me, as opposed to dozens and dozens of assumptions to justify calculations. The razor doesn't uphold it. To give you an actual example, somewhat contentious that many in battleboarding may be familiar with, Naruto, and the god tiers of that verse being casually faster than light by the end of the series, and just calced to over Mach 1000 just at the beginning of part 2. People utilize calculations to assume when characters respond to attacks, assume a time frame of that reaction, assume their numbers are accurate, and voila, you get inflated numbers that hide behind the veil of objective math to influence perception of an entire manga's power level. All I have to do, however, to negate that is point out that Kishimoto, the author, explicitly wrote out for dialogue for a character named Zetsu, stating that lightning is impossible to outright react to when it strikes in 1 millisecond from chapter 391. The same Zetsu, I may add, watched Madara and Hashirama fight to the death, chapter 681, so it's not like he doesn't know what he's talking about, and it's not like it's not applicable to the strongest characters in the series until Sage of Six Paths and all that gets introduced, but that's not important. What is important is that Madara, in his base form, as of fighting Hashirama, is listed as relativistic on versus Battle Wiki. For those who don't know, that is 10% or greater the speed of light per wiki standards. My only assumption to reject that claim is the author knows the world he created. Now, fun fact, that same author makes known that no ninja can dodge the single second speed strike of lightning, yet Madara is fan count to 10% the speed of light. The fun fact is that back in 2004, an Uzumaki art book was released, wherein a bunch of pieces of art that Kishimoto had created were released, put together, and interviewed was given, where he explicitly said that introducing guns to the Naruto-verse was a hardline no-go rule for him because, quote, no matter the ninja, they cannot match guns. Now, obviously, that could have changed over time. I would accept a claim such that Sage of Six Paths mode being an amp to speed and stuff like that exists, and that's reasonable, honestly. But go to defeat the assumption of mine that Madara cannot dodge lightning, you have to claim that the author is wrong on that claim that he made for Zetsu. And then you have to claim that the art is correct, though? Oh, wait a second. We've now encountered a second layer of issues: internal contradiction. Internal contradiction, or logical inconsistency, is a formal logical fallacy as opposed to informal. An argumentation wherein your conclusions rely on premises that your conclusion outright negates. So it's like saying A equals not A. Your conclusion disagrees with your premises, so it's void. In the Naruto example, to negate my claim that Kishimoto, the author, is correct in his written claim via dialogue, you have to assume he is incorrect in his authority over Naruto, and therefore is an unreliable narrator. But then you have to assume that the art he uses to depict those feats is magically free of that bias. Doesn't work. Now, one might be quick to claim, though, that the same thing applies to my own argumentation here, that I'm dismissing the art in favor of the claim, so you're being biased. However, if you actually pay attention to my words, that is completely false. I explicitly state that fan created assumptions of the work. That is to say, if you ever once say, let's assume X in your calculation, I can reject it if dialogue disagrees with it outright. I reject presumptions and accept authorial intent, thereby sidestepping any fallacious claim on my behalf, the same of which cannot be stated for proponents of fan calcs which go beyond the veil of stated explicit character limitation imposed by authorial intent. And I do want to be clear on that. Now, I imagine that certain people will watch this and justify disagreeing by claiming, okay, but math uses logic as its base language, so my justifications can be correct. Or, but we lowball as much as possible to mitigate excessive presumption. And that's fine. You're still wrong. Any assumption would give my claim superiority since I have one supposition. The author is correct. Occam's razor will automatically heavily favor my side the moment you make any assumption and any claim beyond that. Further, to deny me my claim, you have to accept that you are making a formal logical fallacy, such that the author is mistaken and untrustworthy. Therefore, I am wrong. But the author is very trustworthy and put insane thought into his art, therefore the fan calc is right. It doesn't work. You're assuming two contradictory thoughts, a positive and negative claim on the validity of author, and I am only making a positive claim. In logic, the positive and negative claim is actually violating the law of non-contradiction. One of three laws of logic, which state simply something cannot be both true and false at the same time. It's a law, not a theory of logic, meaning if you tried to disprove or disagree with it, you would actually be rewriting all of logic. And your fan calc math goes right out the window anyway, because you're right, logic is the basis of math. So if you dissolve logic to accept your claim, you actually are still destroying your claim. No matter how you attack my position, you fail. After all this, to put it real simply, statements are explicit thoughts of the author made in their own work, and calcs which assume limits beyond the veil of those claims are invalid. I emphasize that in closing because calcs are fine in the majority of situations. I mean, this entire video is solely to disregard calcs going beyond the scope of statements, which inflate people's favored verses for debates. It happens, and unfortunately, Naruto is just a very popular one of it. But hey, what do I know, right? It's just some battle board theory.